What's going on, my good people? Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining us on another FCP Euro DIY. Today we are working on our 2021 Volkswagen Atlas project. Today on the Atlas, we are going to be covering how to install a little bit of an upgrade and a little bit of a visual aid for the old Atlas. We have the B2BFAB fog light bracket install today. This is going to be for the facelift Atlas models, so it's going to be a little bit more involved than your first gen Atlases. So we're going to cover how to install the brackets. We also have some Hella blades, which we are offering on fcpro.com as well. B2B does have their own fog light package as well if you want to go with that, but we're going to be going with the Hellas for today, as well as their dual function fog light wiring harness. So we'll show you how to route that and install that, so that way you know how to wire up your fog lights once you have them bolted up to the front of the car. Should be a fun and cool upgrade for the Atlas today. But before we get into it, let's take a look at some of the tools we're going to need for this DIY. For this DIY, we have a kind of mishmash array of tools. We have a drill and drill bits. We have an air tool that's going to be helpful for cutting some of the plastic radiator shroud. Instead of that, you can also use a Dremel tool, which we are also going to be using. There's a lot of different ways you can go about this, but again, something to cut and drill with is going to be necessary. We have a small flathead screwdriver, a small pick tool, something to cut our zip ties with nice and flush, aka flush cut. Continuing on, we have a 13mm wrench socket as well to go hand in hand with that. We also have a 1/4" ratchet, which is going to be our main ratchet aside from our 3/8 drive electric. A couple extensions and adapters for those. Again, sockets that we're going to be using with that is the 13, the 10, a T25, and a T20. We have some electrical tape. We have some long needle nose pliers, zip ties, keys, not necessary. We have some scissors. I'm going to use a little bit of welding wire to pull our wiring through the firewall. And again, our Dremel. With a job like this, it can be, done a couple different ways. It's one of those where I recommend you watch it all the way through, see what we do, where I mess up, and where you can improve before you start at home. Now with that, let's go ahead and get started. So to get started, we're gonna work on removing our front bumper cover. We have a bunch of T25s to work all the way around, but we're gonna start with the hood release, or latch release here underneath the hood. Just a little plastic tab that holds on this little plastic bracket. We have this little tab release in here. We're going to push that to the center of the handle here and lift up. Then we can set this baby to the side. From there, we're going to continue on with the 4 T25s up top. All right, that's going to free up this top side of things. Now let's get on to the wheel wells. We can do, we'll show you on one side how to do it, and it's going to be the same thing for the other side. So let's do that next. We have 4 T25s in the inner wheel well that we're going to remove. If you have the wheels off for another project or some reason, you can take the whole fender liner out if you'd like, but I don't think we'll need to for this today. So we have 1 T25 up here, another 3 more down this way, as well as some at the bottom, which we'll get to in a moment. I'm going to quickly do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll take care of the T25s on the bottom. We're going to start with the T25 here at the bottom of our driver's side fender flare and just work our way across. If you still have the shield underneath, that is held on by about 10 or 11 T25s and 3 T45s across the subframe. We have ours off since we've been doing some big work on the Atlas, but you would want to get that out of your way. Potentially for some of the hardware under here, maybe not, but again, we have ours off, so that's why it looks the way it does. We have 4 T25s here in the middle as well. 3 more left on this side, including the one for the flare. All right, with that out, let's work on freeing up the fender so we can access the hardware on the inside, holding the bumper to the fender, so that we can get to the T25s that hold the bumper cover to the fender. Let's pull these babies out. There we go. That should be enough. And now we can peel the fender flare back, or the wheel liner back, and get to the hardware inside. We have our T25 hiding up there that we're going to zap out. With that one out, we'll do the same thing on the driver's side. And then we have an electrical connector here on the driver's side, right next to the windshield washer bottle reservoir. It's on this side, baby. This one, I believe, is gonna go with our front bumper cover. There we go. Our T25 is undone. We're gonna gently pull the end of the bumper cover off of our fender. Just make sure nothing else is plugged in. And boom, baby, Atlas bumper off. Set this carefully to the side, and we can work on the next step to getting our brackets in. With the bumper cover off, the only real modifications we need to do is trim a bit of this flap off so that our bracket can make its way around. So we're basically gonna follow this vertical line and just go straight down in this little plastic. Perfect. Let's do the same thing to the other side. So now we're gonna work on lining these brackets up. They go on the inside of your crash bar or frame rail, if you will. We have a hole up here and a hole down here that we're gonna use to secure our hardware. Sometimes if the hardware is too big, you can just ream these out a little bit with a drill bit on both sides to get them in, but let's see what we got here. So my problem is that this little lip here on the hole is causing the bolt to go in at an angle. So I can't get it down straight through enough to make it through the other side of the rail. So we'll get a 5/16 drill bit or something close to this bolt size and just make that a little bit more round. We are in business. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pull this bolt out, clean this area up a little bit, and throw a little spritz of paint since we peeled back some of the paint here. Maybe overkill, but it'll keep this Atlas on the road for the time to come. All right, we have our paint dried up. We have our bolts ready to rock and roll. Let's get this baby through. And then the tricky part is gonna be getting these 13 started on the other side. Try to push the bolt back through and start it on the nut. All right, there, that's the top one started. The bottom one, you can literally just reach from the underneath and you can feel the end of the stud on the other side here. It's actually a lot easier to get to. Even though you can't see it, you can get a good feel for it. All right. So we're gonna get these bolts snugged down just enough where we can have a little play on the bracket should we need to adjust anything. So this may require you to get them, again, just gently snugged up, put the bumper cover back on, check for fitment, and if you need to, take the bumper cover back off, adjust the brackets again, and so on and so forth. This ratchet has no beans left in it, so that'll give us some room for adjustment. We're gonna do the exact same thing on the driver's side, and then we'll get our bumper cover and just slip it over to make sure that these are gonna clear through the grill. So we're gonna start by getting our harness situated here by the fuse panel and the firewall. We have a little tab here to release to get this cover off. Sometimes these are just kind of loosely on here depending on the condition of your car. There's one, there's another tab here. Just lift that baby up. We're going to use this blank space here on our little fuse panel for our power wire. If you don't have a blank space, or maybe you just don't have this at all, you can go straight to the positive terminal, but we have one here. I actually got this nut from the warehouse. I'll leave a link in the video description below for it. It's an M6 that fits perfectly here. It's got a nice little flange, just like the OE bolts in here. It's a BMW nut. So I'll leave that down there should you want to get the same one. So that baby will sit something like that. For the ground, we are going to use the ground back here on the firewall. Pretty straightforward. All right, that nut is going to be locked in to our ground. So I'm going to sneak this from behind so that this nut and ground squeezes everything in there together for us. Now we can put our cover back on. There's little like holes here on the front that kind of help kind of dowel this thing in, but their fitment is a little quirky. There we go. This is where our relay is going to go. We're going to use this speed nut on the back here up against the firewall. It's going to thread this out This is going to catch the threads on the stud. Back this baby out. We'll get our relay. Plug this baby in. It only goes in one way. All right. Tuck these down. Get this baby in like so. The fit on this is not ideal. So I'm going to throw, I think, a little bit of electrical tape on here. I don't want to. It's okay. No, it's not. I don't love the fit of the relay here. It's not the tightest. So I can either try to squeeze these terminals in a little bit more or run a little bead of electrical tape around the edge to keep this relay from falling off, which is, I think, what I'm going to do here. All right, with that situated, let's take a little bit of a win and let's do the quote unquote easier side of things. We're just routing the fog light wiring next. All right, so now my goal is to run the fog light wiring to the front of the car. So obviously the goal is to not just have stuff all over the place, but I want to try to keep it kind of as clean and organized as possible. So I'm trying to kind of see what the best way to route everything is going to be. We have plenty of slack in the wiring, so I'm not worried about running out of room. I just don't want it to look too crazy. Granted, this wiring harness is way nicer than probably anything that's in this engine bay to begin with, so I think we're doing it a favor by running this stuff through here. I don't really love the look of that, and I also don't want to get in the way of things that we may need to service later in the future, like this air box. So I don't want to run it too close to that either. So I might just run it between this fuse panel and the ECU. I'm taking our harness and I'm just following the hood release cable and just gently zip tying the harness to that. Again, I don't want to impede the function of the hood release cable, but that's going to be a nice pass through for us. This one's already underneath the, we'll call it the radiator support. Let's get this other one underneath that. Let me cut the zip tie off. So we're going to have one that goes to the passenger side, one that goes to the driver's side. Obviously, we're going to have a ton of excess wiring here, which is fine. That is going to conclude the front part of our install here. We have our harness. We don't have too much crazy wiring that we'll see through the grills. I think we can reward ourselves with getting the bumper cover back on, and we can go crazy and mount the fog lights too if we want, because the next step is going to be a little bit not fun, which is going to be getting the wiring through the firewall and into the basically the center console for our switches. So let's do the fun stuff first. Let's get the bumper cover back on. We're going to start at the top here. You have 4 little tabs that key into this upper radiator support. Just make sure that they go in, you don't bend them. Let's work our way around here. Oops, a little scratch, a little dirt on the headlight, no problem. If you have a really nice example of an Atlas, we plan on putting this thing through literally the sticks, pinstriping it, so we're not too worried about it. Painter's tape on the lights and the fenders go a long way to protect your investment. I'm not saying I don't care about our Atlas, we're gonna do some stuff with it. So it's not the end of the world. Plus, it's already lived the duty of soccer practice and school pickup lines, so it's got a couple of beauty marks on it. Super simple to press the panel back up against the fender. We're gonna do the other side as well. All right, let's get more comfortable and let's get in the wheel wells. All right, we're gonna get our T25s back in for the fender to bumper. We can get these 4 T25s back in, this bottom one, and then work our way through this corner and do the exact same thing on the other side. Now let's do the other side. Before we go in that wheel well, let's take care of the bottom T25. All right, now we can hop over to that fender liner. All right, with that in, we have a few more T25s at the top of the bumper cover. Let's get those taken care of. Our latch release back in place. All right, with the bumper back on, let's do the last one bit, which is going to be getting the fog lights mounted. And then we'll continue on with the not so fun wiring still. So we have our carriage style bolt. We have our washer that locks into the bottom of the Hella base here. And it's on us to get this lined up. Just gonna use a 13 mil wrench I had out from the bar or the bracket install to snug these down. You can always come back and adjust these. But right now I'm just making sure they're looking nice and even with enough material protruding evenly from, I don't know what I'm talking about. Make them look even, my good people, you know? Just, it's not scientific. You can always adjust these later if you don't like how they look. So one quick note, if you've gotten this far, my good people, and this is something that I probably should have checked before, but I didn't think twice about, is I don't love that I thought I would have liked having the wiring harness coming out on the same grill slot with the bracket. I don't. One, because I can't push it back in. And two, really that's it. If I was able to push it back in, then we can feed this side of our fog light harness in as well and kind of tuck it away. If we had it set to one of the side openings, one of the side slots, then we could have that room to work with and make up for that. So like right now I'm just sandwiched between the grill and the bracket. So if we had it coming out of this slot, or the slot on the right might be a little bit better, again, depending on what kind of fog lights you're installing and how you're doing this at home. But you know, at least you're watching it now, hopefully, before you do it all at home, to learn a thing or two about this. All right, so I'm gonna try to fix this as best as I can and then go from there. Thinking one zip tie here. I unpinned my connector, fed it back through into the grill, and then pulled the wires back out through this side slot, plugged them, repinned the connector, plugged them back in, and then fed them through. But just to keep things kind of clean, I think a zip tie around the grill slot here and this cable might go a long way, depending on if it moves around or not. We'll plug these babies in. So with these Hella blades, and I'm gonna assume similar with the lights that you can get from B2B, the blue wire is gonna be your signal wire for the blade portion, if you will, for sake of this fog light. So for the Hellas, that's gonna be the yellow wire for the amber. If you wanted to do the white blade, then you would run your blue wire from the B2B harness to the pin for the white. So again, you can go either way. These are super easy to depin and repin, and you can change your mind if you want to change them at another point in time, but pretty straightforward. All right, now with these babies in, let's continue on with the boring part of the rest of this install, which is the rest of the wiring. All right, we are now underneath the driver's side footwell. This is going to allow us to get the harness through the firewall. We have 4 T20s here along the front that we need to remove to get this bottom panel off, as well as the cover here is where we're going to put our switch panel in from B2B. To get this baby down, I'll do that now just so we don't forget later. It's very straightforward. There's just a little tab up here that you press. You're really not going to see it, but if you press up enough, that'll release the panel or the cubby, and then you can pull it out. It's just press fit into there. So we'll deal with that later once we get to that point. But for now, let's get these 4 T20s out. And we have a footwell light to unplug right here. A little release tab on each side of the connector. Pretty straightforward. Or you can pop the light out. Let's set this panel to the side. Using this white tab here as our guide, this is what the back of our panel slips into. We're going to pull away some of this gray insulation. They just kind of clip on to the back of the rubber, so try not to tear it if possible. Let's see if we can pop these two sides off. It's going to give us access to this spot right here. This is where our harness is running through the firewall. We peel back this slotted portion of the insulation. We'll see, hopefully, our grommet that we're going to use. So here is our grommet, or part of our grommet that we're going to work on to cut open a little bit to get our wiring through. I'm just going to kind of poke at it with the screwdriver, see if I can get it to twist it out a little bit. I want to cut it as least as possible, so I'll make a hole bigger than we need to. Might even poke through it with the screwdriver. I'm not sure which way I want to go about it yet. A little bit of heat on this would melt it up real nice. That should allow us some room to work with. Now we're going to get our little bit of welding brought through so that we can see it on the other side and hopefully tape our wiring harness to it. Instead of dealing with this going through the firewall, we're going to undo our harness here. Just press in on the little tab and release that. This will go inside the car with us. And then we'll tape this guy to our rod here. What I'm going to do is, okay, let me feed this behind. Hindsight, again, just going kind of in order here from what we have. I would probably leave this little relay loose until I'm done in case you need to rearrange wires. So this will just take an extra second to run through here, but I wanted to pull through and not get tangled up across the front. All right, very carefully, we are going to make this one and tape these two guys together. All right, that is going to be our temp number 1. I know we're going to fight that connector a bit, but hopefully that grommet stretches enough where it's not too much of a problem. And then we'll see what we get on the other side. I'm just pushing the grommet back through, but we got our line here. Okay. All right. And then we have a lot of excess wire. We're going to do the best job that we can to coil it up and then get our ends right here. These guys right here, we're going to get those situated near our fuse panel or fuse box so that we can then work on wiring in our jumper fuse and then adding the cubby for the switches. So we'll have to Dremel the back of that cubby in a little bit. But for now, let's clean this up a little bit. Zip tie the excess out to the side, off to the side, and then go from there. We're gonna install our ground wire. We have about 4 of these that come in the wiring kit, so we just need one for right now. That's gonna go to our switch, since we're not installing all 4 switches. The bolt up here in the top right is gonna be our grounding point. You can use a T30 or a 10 mil socket. I'm just gonna undo this baby real quick. I have the 10 mil already out, so I'm gonna run with that. All right, and then we'll take our ground wire, feed it onto our bolt, and then thread this 10 mil or T30 back in. And then we're gonna snug this baby up. So next we're gonna steal our fuse, position 47. It's a 15 amp fuse. Pull that baby out. And that is going to go into our fuse tap. So you'll see we have the 5 already in here. The 15 will go next to it. All right, and with that baby in, we can go back into that same position. And this is 47. In we go. Awesome. Speeding this harness rudely through here for the time being. So now we have our wires that we're going to be working with. So this blue one here is still being fed through our cubby, the one from our tap. If you wanted to modify this harness, I suppose you could, but it has really nice sheathing on it just to keep the blue wires in from having to go through the cubby. Not a big deal. We can have them go through no matter what. So with that, let's modify our cubby. We'll leave the bottom panel on till the end. Once we have our wiring done and we make sure everything works, then we can coil this up and clean it up nicely. So with that, let's get our Dremel, make some room for this wiring in the back of the cubby, and go from there. We're gonna make the opening on the back side of our cubby to allow our wiring to run through. These 2 squares are probably more than enough. You can use a drill bit or a Dremel like the one we have here. I'm just gonna cut those open. All right, back to the car we go. So at that point, our wiring just goes through our backside here. Fuse tab could probably use another 3 inches to be a little less tedious to work with. I'm going to click the cubby back in its home. And the blue wire off of our harness goes to our blue fuse tap wire. So that is officially in. Those two can live happily ever after. And then you are installing the switch panel, which we're going to leave off just for the time being. It's just double-sided strips that hold it in, just because we're going to be installing a few more things. We don't want to keep ripping it on and off. We're just going to leave our switch loose in here for the time being. Let's get this baby plugged in. The switches also come with a little instruction on how to hook them up, which is really nice from B2B. So there is no guessing work involved. We take our ground. It's our black. Let's get that baby in there. Then we'll get our power. It's going to be our in, 12 volts in, or whatever. Then our out, or our signal wire. And we are in business. Let's see what those look like up front. So if I wired this correctly, if we just turn on the car, basically, we went with the amber for the blades. And then if we hit the switch, we should have the super bright white LEDs on the back. So car on, key on. Fog light switch. Cool. So that allows us to have both the blades and the fog lights on. All right, well, our lights work. All we have left to do really is set these to where we want, pull them up to a garage wall or a garage door, something flat that you can beam them on. If you're doing that at night, might be a little bit better, and just set them so you're not gonna blind everybody, but also still make them useful. At this point, my good people, all we really have left to do is just button up everything back underneath the dash. We have some wire to coil up and zip tie up off to the side. We're gonna tuck the insulation back up, get our 4 T20s and our panel situated, and then all we have left to do is wait for the darkness and go test these things out. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on what we did today, leave those in the comment section below. And if you like this DIY and you'd like to see more like them, please consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. As always, thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.